already been a lot of back and forth on one of the news outlets that was reporting on community reaction on the TV outlets. They had some of the activists from, something Friends, Black Lives
Race
Matter
Matters Friends.
Yes. And Tanya Heath were commenting on that, so we can comment on that as well. So she'll be with us at 7:10. 7:35, AG Andrew Bailey joins us, and then at 8:10, John Stevens from the Hawthorn Foundation. They do a lot of work in Missouri.
They do. They work with the Missouri Partnership, and but they're like a separate entity, and they do like trade missions. And they're constantly promoting Missouri to try to attract business to Missouri. They've had some big successes over the last couple of years.
Yeah, I think it's worth mentioning the Jill Schlude thing. The one of the TV channels is activists, and this person's talking. The real story here is you have the first female police chief and what her priorities are. And that's let's not forget that's the story.
Right.
I know we've got all these sidebars out here, but let's not forget that. She said flat out when I asked her about priorities, I asked her about the cold cases and the Heitholt. There's a lot of different things I wanted to get into. She couldn't get into specifically the Heitholt investigation. She said the cold case is going to be there, but Stephanie and Randy, that I think this is very telling. She said they are 63% staffing on patrol right now. It's 63% of where they should be. They are 38 officers short. And she said that recruitment and retention is going to be good. Their number one priority, answering 911 calls. So that is, I saw some of the television coverage last night, and I just feel like some of this bread and butter stuff is being forgotten. Let's not forget that. If you have an emergency, you need someone to answer the 911 call, that's a big deal. And the other stuff's important. We can talk about it. It is, because not everybody is happy with her. But
that implies that they haven't been answering 911 calls.
And they don't. We don't have enough. We don't have enough. She can talk about this. We don't have enough 911 operators.
Well, we're going to talk with her about that. It's a dispatching problem.
It is. It's been
as well as a answer the call problem.
Or you may be on hold. She can talk about that a little bit. But
on hold for 911. It's not about you. Excuse me, Mr. Attacker. Hang on. Wait a minute. I'm getting a busy signal.
But I do think that's an important issue.
And there's been a lot of anecdotes. Like, for example, in St. Louis, like I call 911 and no one picks up, and and they say they're coming and it's an hour. And so other communities are seeing this, and I think, a return to the fundamentals, because if you don't have your foundation in the fundamentals right, how can you worry about these other issues?
That's right.
And so I'm glad to hear that.
And Brian, I don't know what you get on the scanner, but I had a dear friend from high school, some of our best friends still. He was a St. Louis County dispatcher. And at a 911,
yes,
he said the number of trivial calls that come into 911. So that is that's like an air traffic control job, but worse in terms of the stress, because how do you triage? How do you know? And unbelievable. No wonder the force is decimated at the dispatch center.
And it's up there at the sheriff's department, but kind of behind it. I've been in there, and you're right, and Stephanie's absolutely right as well. And the other stuff, I'm not downplaying, because they're inevitably, whatever Mr. Seawood was going to do, he was going to take some criticism. If he had picked a man, he would have. Probably reporters would ask, well, the woman wasn't selected. It's just, if you go with an internal candidate, people are going to want you to go with the outside. Yeah. So there were a lot of questions like that. But I do think her priorities are, but that's important. But being 38 officers down. Yeah. That is, and then you've got the dispatch thing on top of that. And again, she's not even in the position yet. She won't be sworn in until December the 4th. But it was a big deal, and I'm glad she's going to come on.
All right, so we'll invite your calls and thoughts about that at 573-874-9390. You were at an event, Stephanie, last evening, right? Or recently, anyway.
Yeah, last
evening?
night. Big campaign kickoff for Caleb Rowden out at Logboat. They've done incredible work there. It's been, I think, newly reopened and newly renovated, and I actually was at an event there last week. But full house, big room upstairs, full of people. lots of folks in, lots of Columbia folks, but lots of folks in from Jeff City that I recognize from the Capitol. Of course, his parents were there, his kiddos were there, and we heard a little speech from him. And really a lot of it was about bringing people together and getting over this divisiveness. And he, obviously kind of recognized he's taken some heat from the left and taken some heat from the right, but, he's got his principles and wants to move forward and wants to bring people together.
It was kind of neat the way he did the announcement at the homecoming parade. You were right there to catch it, weren't you?
Oh yeah, and I think it's good that you announce it, at your roots, like with the people that have, been with you from the very beginning. And there were a lot of folks like that in the room for him, but certainly a good showing. And he seems energized.
Were there any state lawmakers there? Did you notice any?
Yes, there were several local state lawmakers and former elected officials as well.
That's a big deal too.
So he's taken a lot of heat from the right and in softening up. But I guess political scientists would say, look at the district you're going to campaign in and you're running for, right? It's not a hard right red meat eating district in toto, correct?
No, certainly not.
No, if you look at Caleb Rowden, Stephanie knows, is a formidable campaigner. I'm not sure I've ever seen anybody do what he can do. But if you look at the 2016 race, he barely won against Stephen Weber. In 2020, he barely won against Judy Baker. In Cooper County did help, but it's just he has a knack for winning and also in 2012 when he ran for the House the first time, he is the only person in state history to beat two former state senators for a House seat. That's never been done in history. It'll probably never be done again. One of them was the former Senate Democratic leader Ken Jacob.
He's charismatic on the stump.
That's pretty impressive. But and then this next year is going to be interesting to see how he navigates the Senate, because his own caucus is somewhat divided right now.
Well, and even more so than that, he has a really good record that he can run on and a story. And he said, look, like two of my top priorities when I came in were, doing something about I-70 and then returning Mizzou to its glory, right? And Mizzou has never been in a better place, in my own opinion. And, here we are, we're doing I-70. And there were a couple other priorities he talked about, but those are two really big ones. And so when you can say, hey, I came in, I said I was going to do this, and guess what? We did it. That's a powerful story.
Yeah, he delivered on what he said he was going to. What a rare event these days in politics. So, and Caleb is a formidable individual. I mean, he's a man of faith. He's a well-spoken individual. He keeps his cool. And keeping your cool in the Capitol these days, John, is quite an art form, isn't it?
Especially with the GOP and the Missouri State Senate.
So, John, when you're hanging out at the bars till 11, 12 at night there at Jeff City, catching the buzz, what are people saying about Caleb's run for Secretary of State?
The rumor mill had it on the street for quite some time, so I don't think people were overly surprised. Like Stephanie and I joked that Caleb made his announcement to everybody in town for Mizzou's homecoming in the parade and all. So, I think he's got a good shot at it.
Was that unexpected? I mean,
no,
did you have any forewarning of that?
Oh, we kind of knew it was coming.
Oh, you knew it was coming at the parade.
I didn't know it was coming at the parade, but I think they had mentioned something about that week, so we kind of knew it was going to.
It's like Senator Scott announcing on Trey Gowdy's program that he was suspending his campaign. It caught Trey Gowdy by surprise.
That was a shock. Trey Gowdy, and we played the audio, and there's the pauses are so long, and all you see is Trey Gowdy blink like, did I hear you right? It was almost cartoonish.
Yeah, it was good. Well, when we come back, we need to pivot to some matters going on in D.C. We'll take a little break for a couple of minutes and then come back. And it went on and on and on. That was a little bit from some mayhem in D.C. last night outside the DNC headquarters with the Palestinian pro-terrorist mob going on. And it's time for the D.C. Daily Rundown with Stephanie.
And it got illegal and violent, according to the U.S. Capitol Police. They said about 150 people were gathered out there. They were actually having a reception on the inside, which I'm sure angered the Democrats. Hakeem Jeffries was actually on the inside, I think, which is why the U.S. Capitol Police then came and got involved. And yeah, they said it got pretty violent.
John, I wonder if there were any of those Democrats inside there at the reception and they were shooting films of themselves so that they could prosecute the insurrectionists at this event. What do you think?
Yeah, heck, you never know, do you?
Stephanie, I doubt we'll see any of that.
Well, while they were hanging out in D.C., a lot of Democrats are down in San Francisco or up in San Francisco. So President Biden is there, Vice President Harris, Antony Blinken, also Janet Yellen. They're all there for APEC. Of course, Biden is meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping. They agreed. There were some agreements, very few. I think in principle, but they said, yeah, we really do need to resume military-to-military communications. We also need to figure out the fentanyl issue because, of course, it's coming from China, then coming up through our border. And so they agreed to cooperate on anti-drug policies. Do we think this is any more than just words?
The only specifics I heard was that they're going to somehow clamp down on the distribution of pill presses coming from China. Like, I guess you can get those on Amazon. I don't know. And the raw materials, like, are they really going to control that? When's the last time China ever delivered on a promise?
Well, they control everything else, right? But they're not going to control this.
I just don't trust anything that comes out of Xi Jinping's mouth. And remember, if you watch the motorcade coming in, do you notice there were no American flags down the street?
Not a
There were all Chinese flags. What's that all about?
What is that about? Our friend Raven yesterday said it looked like you couldn't even tell it was in America. I mean, just scary.
That's frightening. And then during the sit-down session with the Chinese on one side and the Americans with the cabinet, and it was interesting, Kerry was there and the cabinet members. Blinken was essentially like a visiting angel for Joe Biden. I mean, he was having to basically guide him and stage manage him the whole time. It was embarrassing.
We played some audio where someone described him, and I think this is the best description of him as a Roomba. He kind of like runs around and then he bumps into stuff and then he gets turned around and you have to. I mean, I'm constantly.
And he sucks. So
yeah, I'm constantly following my Roomba around like, no, not over here, here. But yeah, so not a great look for us on the world stage. Meanwhile, Congress is kicking the can. I don't know. Do we praise them for this because they actually avoided the deadline of Friday, or do we say, can we just get some stuff done and quit? Because we're going to be talking about this in January and then again in February because now we have 2 deadlines, not just one.
He has separated out the Ukraine and Israeli funding from appropriations funding, though, and he claims that they're going to split these things off and fragment them.
But can he get anything done?
Yeah, I don't know. I think this guy might surprise you. He's got a way about him that is interesting. He's not an inflamed guy. He's very, with our attorney friend sitting here, he has that calm, cool, collected. He doesn't get flapped, and I think that could be effective.
I think that would be helpful in Congress, seeing as it's been kind of a fiery week, there, and there's a lot of ego and a lot of personalities. So maybe he can mediate us to a good deal on spending. Also, of course, we've got every day we've got some 2024 news. We've got, as you mentioned earlier, Randy, we've got Tim Scott's out, and the real question is where does his support go? I think there was some Trump polling out this week that said perhaps Nikki Haley is picking up, although she stepped in big time on the First Amendment earlier this week, and I have just seen so much fallout, and people are like, don't let her walk. She's going to want to change her mind on that and say, well, I really didn't mean it. But if you go back, and people have been combing through her clips, and they said, look, this isn't a new stance for her. No. She said similar things in the past. It was just a little bit more clear and articulated the other day on that podcast. But she's said similar things, and I think she's going to pay for that dearly.
Yeah, it's interesting. We don't really care too much, John, about ID cards and people coming across the border, but every Twitter and Facebook account will have to be authenticated. What's wrong with that picture?
Yeah, where's the anonymity, number one, and number two, we're right back to the First Amendment discussion.
Yeah, well, you were talking about the rumble in D.C. the other day. Here's a little montage from that rumble on Capitol Hill the other day. Oh, don't have it? Okay. We had 3 of them, right? We had Burchett and McCarthy.
Uh-huh.
We had Mark Wayne Mullen and Sean O'Brien.
Yeah,
right?
the union guy. They were going to fist fight.
And then we had Comer and Markowitz, right? It's unbelievable. Yeah, here it is.
Crazy.
And got elbowed in the back, and it kind of caught me off guard because it was a clean shot to the kidneys. And I turned back, and there was Kevin. He's a bully with $17 million in a security detail.
No, I did not elbow him. No, I would not elbow him. I would not hit him in a kidney. I guess our shoulders did because Bertie runs up to me after. I didn't know what he was talking about. You look like a Smurf here, just going around and all this stuff. Now listen,
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to tell you something. Hold on. If we're not on time,
we spew disinformation.
Sir, this is a time. This is a place. If you want to run your mouth, we can be two consenting adults. We can finish it here.
Okay, that's fine. Perfect.
You want to do it now?
I'd love to do it right now.
Well, stand your butt up then.
You stand your butt up.
Oh, hold on. Oh, stop it.
Is that your solution, every poll?
No, sit down. Sit down. You're a United States Senator.
John, does that foreshadow some of the goings on in the legislature down in Jefferson City? Of Mid-Missouri, I'm Randy Tobler, along with Stephanie Bell.
Good morning.
And John Marsh.
Yes, sir. Good morning.
And there's Hannah over there making sure that the circus is all good. You're like the ringleader in the middle of the circus. You've got the top hat on and everything, Hannah.
Yeah, something like that.
We're very thankful for that. Hannah,
whipping a chair to keep the lions back.
Producer, yeah, she's got the whip. I've got the scars to show for it. It's awful, I'm telling you. Hey, joining us now is Rob Collins. He's the CEO of a new company that is part of the developing parallel economy called Coign, C-O-I-G-N. How you doing, Rob? Thank you for joining us.
Glad to be on the show. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate everything you're doing.
You know, I was looking at a story out of The Spectator talking about how the patriot economy is really being fueled by a couple of convictions. First, that the right needs its own economic infrastructure so that we don't have to do business with woke corps. And the second is that conservatives need to ensure against being shut out of the traditional economy because, I mean, there really is discrimination that goes on in the workplace. It may be silent. It's never going to be overt, but certainly goes on if you're an employee for sure. So you decided to do something different in the finance realm.
Yeah. About 2 years ago, we launched a credit card for conservatives. And the idea being the same great credit card you've always had and used. You know, conservatives demand and should expect good, high-quality products. But every time you swipe, you get unlimited cash back. The customer gets unlimited cash back. And we put a portion of the transaction of our profits into conservative charities. And we have customers in every state, and it's going like gangbusters. But I will comment that in the financial space, the bias against conservatives isn't silent. They will tell you, love the product, love the business, this is great, you guys, good luck, we don't do business with conservatives.
Really? You just get it right in your face?
Right between the eyes.
Do you have to pay? Well, do you have to pay more for the money that you're then lending out to consumers?
Well, you know, more for the money. We're with smaller banks. It won't shock you. We work exclusively with banks and financial providers in the Midwest. And they ask great questions, like which you would expect a businessman and woman to ask. Are we going to make money? Are you going to be around in a year? The coastal banks, the big banks, the banks you've heard of, they ask questions like, will Donald Trump have a credit card? Like, I don't know. I don't know. What's his credit score? Like really ridiculous questions. And you're like, are you more worried about us making money for you than how, we'll follow the law, we'll follow the rules. Like, so, oh yeah, it's tough out there, but thank God there's a number of institutions that look beyond the politics and just want us to be successful because it'll help them, make money for their shareholders, which is their duty.
What about with other business owners? I've kind of seen this done with cell phone companies, with coffee, with consumer products. Is there a network? Are you talking to all of these other folks about how you can really build up this conservative economy?
We are. I mean, I spent my early years in politics helping elect Republicans. And what I learned then was, we have to work together. It's critical. So actually, we've all heard of Black Friday. It's the biggest shopping day of the year in America. And we started something called Red Friday, and you can go to redfriday.us and check out the website. And we're just trying to get as many conservative businesses. We're not charging anyone anything, but just everyone, if you're going to spend on the day after Thanksgiving, get ready for Christmas, instead of going to woke places, Amazon, other places, go shop at a conservative store, whether it's coffee or a credit card or a phone or whatever it is. And we started with 5 other companies, and I think we're over 20 now. And we're starting to build a little momentum, which we're really excited about because we're just a credit card, and we're how you pay for everything. But you have to be able to buy stuff, and we just wanted to support the community, and we've been doing that for about the past month, and we've gotten great pickup, and people seem really excited about it. So, yeah, we're trying to encourage it as best we can.
We're talking with Rob Collins, the CEO of Coign, C-O-I-G-N, a conservative credit card company.
Mike, this seems like a perfect fit for a Mike Lindell promotion in My Pillow and all, because boy, he's certainly worn his hard on his sleeve for the MAGA crowd, hadn't he?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, he was a little bit of I had a few moments of inspiration along the way. And I remember the first time I saw his commercial. Remember he had the electric blue shirt with the big gold cross on Fox? And I even stopped, and I was at my office, and I grabbed the remote to turn up the volume. I was like, what's this guy up to? And, and you just saw somebody who, had a point of view, but also a great product. And, the left doesn't like him, but they love his pillows. They won't tell you, but, I mean, everyone loves those pillows. So, yeah, I met Mike Lindell in Washington once, and he was really great, generous, took a photo with me. So, yeah, he's a little bit of an inspiration for me.
It's interesting that is there a developing fraternity / sorority of like-minded business people? I think of the likes of Andrew Krapachetz at the Red Balloon .work, I think is his website, where, he tries to connect employees. It's like a bulletin board for, for employees and employers who just want to get a good day's work, make a lot of profit, and, make a successful company. Wow, what a novel idea. And throw out all the DEI and political correctness and CRT education and everything else.
Yeah, I mean, the Patriot economy, the parallel economy, is a multi-billion-dollar opportunity, but it's new. So everything we do, we kind of have to build on our own. And so it is great having other companies. I feel like we don't do enough to talk to one another. And, conservatives are kind of instinctively go-it-alone types. So, we're not collectivists by nature. So, but I do feel like things are getting better and people are talking. And I love Red Balloon and there's a couple other places, because after you have trouble finding the money, the next step is finding the talent. And it is hard to find folks who are aligned. And nothing is worse than when you're working with somebody and, some employee pitches a fit that they're working on a conservative project, and you're 6 months in, and they call you to say, well, we're going to cancel working with you. And you're like,
oh, man,
this is not professional, guys. Like, what are you doing? So it's great to start with people who are mission aligned so you don't have these problems.
Yeah. Well, and I guess that you have a lot of willing employees when you are searching for workers as you grow, right? I mean, there's a lot of people that just want to put in a good day's work and go home and be with their family and not be harassed with distraction.
There are, and it's there's more confidence in the employees to leave a place and go to a conservative place. I think there are some folks who remain nervous to have conservative, especially in the tech field, on their LinkedIn or resume. But every day it gets a little easier. I mean, like I said, we're building something new. We're pioneers in a new field. And so a lot of people just aren't sure if they should, put their family's future in it. But, where we were 2 years ago, even to where we are today, which is not that long ago, it's unbelievable progress, a tremendous advancement. And I feel like the community is really starting to go. I'm excited for where it's going to be in 5 years because, the corporate America is not looking at this growth and saying, hey, gang, let's tilt right. They're tilting left. I mean, they're getting more aggressive. They're getting more out there. So they're just reminding half of America that they don't support their values. They don't care about their values. I mean, I'll give you a fun fact. So I told you we give money to charities. We're going to give over $100,000 in our first year. We're a startup. First year, over $100,000 to conservative charities. We'll give more money to conservative, patriotic charities than the top 3 credit cards in America will give combined.
Oh my gosh!
It's all public. You can find what you can show. They have to show you where they put their money.
Wow!
And it's shocking.
Hey, that's big time. That's big time. Hey, Rob, I want to thank you for being with I'm Randy Tobler, and with the Wake Up Mid-Missouri team, there's Hannah.
Hello.
The producer.
Hello.
You ever see that movie, The Producers? It's a great movie. You ought to watch it sometime.
I don't think so.
There's Stephanie Bell.
Good morning.
I'm not very cultured. I'm sorry.
John Marsh.
Should we sing Springtime for Hitler?
I don't. Can you imagine? I don't think any of the Mel Brooks movies would have been made if he was starting out today.
Oh, no.
No,
way.
They just
Blazing Saddles?
Are you kidding me? And you think of the serials like, All in the Family. Oh, my goodness. It would have never been made today. And
I'm just glad that Stephanie is equally as lost as I am.
You guys need to go back and look at that. Because
some classic stuff.
We will get right on that, Randy.
That is how the beginning of the end of a racial society. Those are the things that showed how ridiculous racism can be. And by making light of it and how hilarious it is if you try to take it seriously as something to really ponder as a way of having a worldview, it made fun of it. And that made anyone who was a racist embarrassed to be that person. You really ought to go ahead and look at those.
Okay.
Yeah. You're not going to do that, are you, Stephanie?
With all my spare time, Randy.
I'm watching the body language here. She's like,
no.
Yeah.
Their destination with Sanford and Son's not going to happen.
But I think you're fair. I mean, your assessment of like how TV shapes culture, I think for sure is fair. And I was really hoping that we would get some better TV out of this actors and writers strike and stuff, and get more like newer reality TV. And lately TV's been so dumb.
Yeah. Are they still doing the Bob Hart Abishola series? Did you ever see that? I love that series. It's a Nigerian nurse that takes care of who's the portly comedian?
Fluffy?
Huh?
Are you talking about Fluffy?
I can't think of his name, but anyway, it starts out with he's a cardiac patient.
Oh.
And she takes care of him, and it's the most unlikely of unions, but it turns into this sort of, she's a very strong, in Nigeria, the women rule the roost, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, okay. And so it's just it's the most magical comedy. It's lovely.
I'll give you this.
Billy
Hannah,
Garday, I think. Something like that. Yeah.
Well, Hannah's been trying to convince me to watch Hallmark movies, and I'm much more likely to watch these, Randy, than the Hallmark movies.
Oh, Hannah, you and my wife could have a BFF girl Hallmark fest.
No, I don't like Hallmark movies.
Oh, I thought you liked them. Oh, you don't like them.
No, I'm not a fan of mushy romance crap.
Yeah. Well, they're all the same plot.
She's just been telling us about them. Yesterday, it was a new Hallmark movie about someone who stacks Jenga blocks.
Yeah,
Jingle blocks.
A 15-year-old broke his own world record several times on how many Jenga blocks he could stack on a single block. And Hallmark apparently picked up on it and thought, hey, that would make a great plot for a Christmas movie.
You're not kidding.
No,
that was yesterday's What's Hot with Hannah. No,
it premiered last night. Did you miss it? How could you?
Oh, sorry. I'll have to go back and look at the reruns of that. We record everything, you know. We've got the DVR loaded. No, we don't.
Yeah,
no,
you're going to go watch that one just like Stephanie and I are going to go watch the Mel Brooks movies.
I can tell my wife within the first 5 minutes or less of every Hallmark movie who the ultimate love interest is of the woman. It's usually the guy cleaning the horse stall across the barn, not the guy who owns the stall.
or the one with the bakery.
Right, yeah, because they look at one another longingly, and, you know, it's John, it's all the same, right? Same story, different chapter.
Yeah, there's really not much difference. It may be the locale.
You're right. So, Stephanie, marijuana legislation support is up and up and up.
It is up and up and up. There's a new article out in a Gallup poll saying we've reached 70% amongst people when they're asked, do you think that marijuana should be legal or not? Now, if you go back to 1969, that's when they started tracking this, it was just over 10%. I mean, that is a huge change. And the other interesting thing was it really, like, party didn't really matter. And then I think, too, the really interesting thing is, so Ohio just recently voted to legalize it. It is, they're like the 24th state, so we've got about half the states. But they said the 70% is the same in states that have already legalized and in states that haven't yet legalized. And I thought that was kind of interesting. And I think, you know, I think in some instances, maybe you legalize it and then you're like, oh, we shouldn't have done that. And now everyone around you is doing marijuana and you're like, I don't think we should have done that. And you would see that number come down. We're not seeing that. And then you're also seeing, and there's still a lot of support among states, even if they haven't voted yet. It sounds like the majority of their people are like, let's just get it done.
It's almost as though, hey, we have bigger fish to fry. It's a inevitable event. John, I had a heartwarming story the other day. I couldn't find a place to process the deer. The place I normally take it to, they didn't have any workers there. And I found a man and his two sons at 4 p.m. on Sunday afternoon. I'd shot my big trophy guy.
Is this a humble brag, Randy? Got my deer.
I haven't gotten one in a long time.
Okay.
I only shoot them if they're going to go on the wall. I like to hold it for other people on the farm that hunt with me.
Is that a nice way of saying you miss a lot?
No, I don't. I just don't pull the trigger. I just like to sit out there. So anyway, I knocked on the door because I knew some activity was going on, but the usual drive-through bustle was not there. And this guy answered, and here's his two boys with him. He says, man, I don't know if I can take the deer. I've worked all weekend. We just don't have any help. And the boss says, if you've got cash, I don't know how to do the credit card, but if you can put cash down, then I can take it. I said, why is that? He looked me in the eye. I had to go home and scrape together $100 cash, come back. I said, what's going on? I said, this place used to bustle. There were 6 or 7 guys doing this, And he looked me in the eye. He says, it's the marijuana. I said, what?
Oh.
He says, yeah, these guys, a lot of them are just, they get apathetic. And I've seen this. I said this. I warned y'all. I told you so. It doesn't happen.
Simmer down, Randy.
It doesn't happen to everyone, but it happens to enough people. And he said, these guys are on welfare, and then they just, they'll come and work enough, and then they call in or they don't call in, and the cat died for the 15th time. That was his words verbatim. This guy had spent time in prison on hard drugs. And he had his sons working there. And we had the best talk. He says, I was on a work release program, prison release program. I took off my orange, put on my suit, my civvies, and went to work and came back. I found God, and I'm teaching these boys what a good day's work means. And I looked at the boys. I said, your dad is teaching you the most valuable lesson ever. And these kids I said, you must be tired. They say, yeah, but it's okay. It's fun. We're working with Dad. I mean, it was the most heartwarming story ever. So this was not Randy, old fuddy-duddy Randy saying it. This was a guy who's been there and done that, knows what drugs can do, and saying, we got a problem. I mean, you drive by the dispensary that I live a little down in Southeast, you can't even And that was to Carlon Seawood, city manager of Columbia, announcing the next chief of police for the city of Columbia, Missouri, Jill Schlude. And she joins us now. Thank you so much, with all that's going on and the turbulence in your life, for spending a little time with us. Chief-elect Jill, thanks for being with us.
Thank you, guys. Good morning.
Hey, so I think a lot of folks would like to know a little bit about you, your history, your bio, and why you applied for the job.
Well, I'm originally from St. Joseph, Missouri. I grew up there, and I moved to Columbia in 1995 to attend school. And I've lived here mostly that entire time since 1995. I spent a little bit of time away for a job, but pretty much in Columbia since 1995. I just had my 18-year anniversary with the police department last month, so I've been there quite a while. Why did I apply for the job? Well, I think when certain opportunities present themselves, it took there was a lot of conversations at home with my family. As I mentioned yesterday, my husband is a sergeant at the police department, and so we knew that would mean he would need to retire. So there were a lot of conversations around that. But I think I felt like I had spent 12 years as a member of command staff at the department, and I felt like I had seen enough things and been involved in enough things that I had a good knowledge base to be part of a leadership team and be the leader of a leadership team, honestly, that could get us through this next phase, because we've got some big challenges ahead of us. But I'm excited about the prospect of that.
Well, and again, we congratulate you. It was good to see you yesterday, and you've been with the department since 2005, and you'll, of course, be sworn in December the 4th at the city council meeting. Ms. Schlude, I asked you yesterday at the press conference and gave me a really good answer, but I'll have you elaborate just a little bit. I asked you about priorities, and you mentioned the shortage. You're about 63% staffing right now on patrol. Another one, in fact, you said the number one priority right now for your department as you become chief will be to answer 911 calls. And that did not get as much media coverage as I thought it would. It certainly has from me, but I think that's a big deal. I'm going to have you elaborate on that, the importance of that, and what's the situation up there with the dispatch center? How many operators roughly do they need?
Oh, wow. The last time I sat in on one of their meetings, I know they are significantly short at the 911 center as well. And that's a huge challenge for them, and we're kind of in the same boat with them when it comes to that. All across the department and every bureau and division, we are carrying vacancies. We try to do that very strategically so that no one unit is overwhelmed with work. Unfortunately, we're in a position right now where we're holding vacancies in detectives and street crimes and narcotics in a lot of different places. We used to have an officer embedded with Office of Neighborhood Services. That position has not been filled since that officer retired in July. So there are a lot of places where we have needs and we just can't put people in them because we're so short-staffed on the street. And the reality is, if we don't have enough officers on the street, we can't answer those 911 calls as they come in, or other high-priority calls that come to us. And we all have to remember that officers do need time off. Mm-hmm. So if we don't have enough people staffed on the street, it's extremely difficult to get people days off, and that leads to a lot of burnout, and that harms retention. So we're going to be looking at ways we can best use the resources that we have right now, while also trying to look towards the future and how do we recruit more employees while we retain the ones that we have.
Chief, talk to us about that recruiting effort, especially as it regards young people. We know Lincoln University in Jefferson City has the first law enforcement training academy based at a historically black college in the country. How do you convince young people to go into law enforcement?
Well, I think the approach that a lot of departments had when people that are in my age group and older were recruited was more appealing to the excitement, if you will, of law enforcement. So, car chases and things like that. And while that is certainly, I think you have to like excitement if you want to get into this job, obviously, and the unpredictability. But I think what we're seeing across the nation is much more of a side where people, and especially new recruits, they want to feel part of something bigger where they're making a difference. And so we're going to have to look at our recruiting efforts as far as how we are presenting the job to the people that we want to have come work for us. I think you're seeing a lot more service-oriented recruiting. I think that's positive. I think it's also much more realistic about what the job really is. Columbia is a fairly big town, but we're not Kansas City, we're not St. Louis, and we're certainly not Dallas or Chicago. And so we don't engage in all those kinds of things every day, thankfully. So we have to be honest with people about what the job is, and at its core, it's really about helping people a lot of times on their worst days. Sometimes that's connecting them with services. Sometimes that's just talking to them. Sometimes, unfortunately, it's arresting them. But I think we need to appeal to the public service side of the job.
We're talking to newly appointed Chief of Police in Columbia, Jill Schlude. And Chief, I wanted to play a little bit of your opening remark and maybe get into the little weeds about your agenda, if I may. So here's a little bit of that from yesterday.
My vision is one of community partnership and proactive engagement. I believe in fostering open lines of communication, listening to the concerns of our residents and staff, and collaboratively addressing the challenges that we will face. Together, we can build trust, enhance public safety, and create a city where everyone feels secure. Okay. So when I heard that, I heard that there's at least a perception of some trust issues among, well, we certainly know there's some vocal contingent in this community that has some trust issues. But you mentioned proactive engagement. With whom and with what goal?
Well, I want to be really clear that when I said that, that is also a two-way street. I think I've seen over the years, and in some cases where we have a problem, especially pervasive problems. Currently, I would say that is things like homelessness would be a good example. And I think those things have kind of been taken and laid at the front door of the police department in some respects, not by everybody, but by some folks. And the reality is we don't have the time, the resources, or in some cases even the expertise to deal with those as long-term problems. We can be part of that solution, and we certainly want to be at the table because we play a role in a lot of those areas. But to think that the police department or probably even the city government itself is going to solve things like gun violence, homelessness, it's just not realistic. And so I think people are going to have to start really getting engaged with the police department just as much as we need to get engaged with the public. There's a lot of voices out there. There's a lot of great ideas, and I'm a big believer in people being heard. I am a realist, though. I know we're not always going to agree, and that's okay. Another thing I mentioned was unity, and unity is not everyone singing Kumbaya and everybody loves each other. To me, unity is unity of purpose. If we're all in agreement, there are things that we need to change here in the community, and we're all going and pulling in that direction, I think some of those differences won't be as meaningful as long as we're getting those things accomplished.
Now, when we heard you were announced, DeCarlin Seawood announced you as the first female police chief, what does that mean to you? And do you think, does it add extra pressure as you go forward in your role?
It's obviously meaningful to me. Anytime you feel like you're somebody who has been able to go into something and I think make that more realistic for other people that are going to come behind you, I think that's special. I mentioned, there were some great women that I got the opportunity to work with that I saw move up through the ranks. I think when I came to the police department, Zim Schwartz was a captain. So she was already serving in a command staff role. Diane Bernhard was the first deputy chief of police. She actually preceded me directly in that role. So there's been some people over the years that I think have really been pushing on that glass ceiling, I guess, so to speak. So I'm honored to be in the role. I do think there is some extra pressure, of course. I think there's always pressure on the police chief, no matter what. I think hopefully this. In this point in time in the city, I just hope everybody is ready to come together and start really working together, regardless of who's in charge of the police department. And I think we're going to be able to do that, and I'm really, really excited to be part of that effort.
If I may just wrap up our time with you, Chief Schlude, I have to tell you that many of our listeners join me in a lot of concern over the predicate with which some activists in the community approach the very highly publicized and on video, social media, exposed events. I'm thinking of the Harpo's event where a couple of officers resigned. I I went to the expose by Don Weaver on how police are trained and the various escalation techniques that they use. And I came away with an entirely and better informed opinion of exactly what everyone saw initially on that. And yet there were people in the room that night that actually in their statements, it was clear the predicate among some in this community and others across America, the predicate is, the assumption is that whenever there is an encounter between a police officer and someone that is either acting out violently, a threat to themselves or others, however you want to pose that, a potential perpetrator or an actual perpetrator, that there's an intent to harm. That's the predicate that they come at that with. That we think that you're going to hurt us, that you're there to kill us, that you're there to shoot us, not kill, but shoot us. How are you going to combat and try to get at just the myth that is? That's just a blatant myth. I learned it that day with Don Weaver's presentation on police training.
Well, first of all, I'll say I think it's really important that people see every single incident that occurs. That is its own incident. It's not going to be exactly like any other incident that they're going to watch. So there are things that happened before, things that happened during that are going to be different than any other incident they may have watched. And I think sometimes the knee-jerk reaction is to just compare things they see locally to something they may have seen nationally that it really isn't relevant in a lot of ways. I think it's important that people know that when I look at these things, and I've been over internal affairs before, I've been involved in that process for years in many different shapes, it's important to understand that it's vital that police officers feel like they are getting due process. If they don't feel like they're getting due process, I can promise you we will not be recruiting police officers to work in Columbia, Missouri. And so it's also difficult when you think about people who, if they're doing their jobs correctly, police officers are spending their time ensuring that the people that they deal with are getting due process, and to try to turn that around and think that it's going to be fair or they're going to perceive it as fair if they're not getting due process when they may have done something wrong, whether as a mistake or willfully did something, you're just not going to, that's not going to harm morale. So I think it's important. I think the role that I have to play in that is I have to prove to people that the police department is going to take care of things when they arise. And the problem with that whole process is personnel records aren't public. So anything that we do, any action that we take, whether that's as small as a counseling, if it's training, if it's something actually disciplinary like a suspension or a demotion, those things aren't public knowledge. So when we do those things, unfortunately, that's just the way it is. And I understand why it's that way, and I understand that's hard for people to build trust. However, I do think there are some things we can do to be a little bit more transparent that I'm going to be talking with the legal department about, as far as reports we can release that we used to do that still protect people's identity but give people the assurance that we are handling internal matters correctly.
Well, new Chief of Police in Columbia, Jill Schlude, we thank you for that transparency. And you are now the chief peacekeeper, in a sense, and the chief peacemaker, in a sense. And it's a tough job, and I am certain, after talking with
sure do end up talking about it a lot. And I'm not sure how I feel about that.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, once again, we're talking about the abomination that is Crocs.
Oh, come on.
So you're not a Croc fan. You think they're a Croc?
Yeah.
Okay.
They're hideous, and as fashionable as Stephanie Bell is, I cannot for the life of me believe that she is a Croc fan. But she is, and we fight about it all
She is the diva of broadcast fashion.
I think I have like 20 pairs in my house, like between my kids and me.
You and Imelda Marcos?
I think I have like 5 pairs of my own. Now, they're really durable. So, like, I'm an OG Crocs gal. And I
Not the humble brag you think it is.
I bought my first pair of Crocs probably when I was in college, which would have been 2004. So, and I still have those Crocs because you know what? They're good quality products.
One of the Wake Up family members sent us a meme one time, and it said that the holes in Crocs are for your dignity to seep out or something like that. But McDonald's is teaming up with Crocs once again. They, a while back, had released some Chicken McNugget and Big Mac Gibbets, which are the little charms that you can stick in the holes of your Crocs to make it even uglier.
Wow.
So they're teaming up with McDonald's yet again to release some extra hideous ones. There's 4 pairs coming out, and they're all based off of the traditional McDonald's characters that you think of. So there's, black and white striped ones for, any guesses?
The Hamburglar.
Yes.
Hamburglar.
There's a pair of bright yellow ones for Birdie.
Big Bird? Big Bird.
Birdie, the early bird.
Okay.
But there's a pair of purple ones for Grimace. And they are like sandal style.
Oh.
Good morning.
And producer Hannah.
Hello.
And John Marsh.
Good morning.
And we have a special guest. His name is Missouri's Attorney General Andrew Bailey, who joins us now after the release of a big report. General Bailey, tell us about it.
Yeah, guys. Hey, look, we're proud of the work we did to remove the Soros-backed prosecutor in the city of St. Louis. She was unlawfully refusing to do her job. She had turned control of the streets over to the criminals. She needed to be held accountable. We filed action in court to remove her within less than 45 days of me being in office. We pushed that case forward. And 2 hours before she was about to be ordered to sit for deposition and turn over tens of thousands of pages of documents, she vacated that office. And it was a direct result of our work in this litigation. And we're proud of the work we did. It's important that the people understand what went wrong here so we can put systems in place to prevent it from ever happening again. And that's all documented in the report. We wanted to get that out there so that the people could see where the breakdown occurred in this deadly social experiment that had catastrophic results, not only for St. Louis, but for the people of the state of Missouri.
It's been a tough battle across these United States, hasn't it, General Bailey? Trying to root out these guys and just get them, guys and gals, across the state, whether it's in St. Louis or Chicago or anywhere. And Missouri, and with your leadership, was successful in that, whereas other jurisdictions, I think of L.A. and others, even recall votes haven't resulted in either resignation or ouster one way or another. It was good to see.
Yeah, look, Missouri's fortunate that we live in a state that has a legal mechanism, and certainly as Attorney General, we had the fortitude and tenacity to file the suit and push it forward. You know, I think the numbers are telling. Look, there were 4,000 police reports, more than 4,000 police reports, sitting on a desk that she hadn't touched. Those were crimes that were committed that were reported by the police that she didn't do anything about. She had a 96% non-prosecution rate. Of the reports she actually did review, she didn't do anything about 96% of them, which means she's only filing about 4% of the cases that come to her office. She had a 39% dismissal rate. So of the small percentage of cases she actually filed, she dismissed 39% of them. And to put it in context, the court had to dismiss 2,700 cases because of her unlawful refusal to send discovery, prep witnesses for trial, and show up to court. And that forced the court to have to dismiss cases. So this was an abominable failure. She came to office bragging about a new approach to criminal justice to reduce the criminal the footprint of the criminal justice system, to balance racial equities. And anytime you have that kind of nebulous social agenda, harm follows. And it had deadly, catastrophic consequences for the state of Missouri.
General, is coming from your background as a prosecutor yourself, both at the county level and also in the AG's office, what about Kim Gardner stands out to you the most?
Well, I think one of the things that's most frightening, and I think this is kind of a telltale sign for other states, and again, potentially a blueprint for other states to use, but she partnered with the Vera Institute. And the Vera Institute is a left-wing, radical advocacy organization. Unfortunately, the Vera Institute receives federal funding. They receive grants from Biden's Department of Justice, tens of millions of taxpayer dollars that funnel through the DOJ into the Vera Institute, and allows this insidious group to infiltrate prosecutors' offices. The Vera Institute became hopelessly intertwined with Kim Gardner's office and encouraged her to abandon a case-by-case analysis in favor of a systemic approach. So what does that mean? That means she's nullifying law by not enforcing it. Specifically, let's look at armed criminal action, Section 571 015. If you commit a felony and also use a dangerous or deadly instrument, you are also guilty of a second felony of armed criminal action. Armed criminal action carries a mandatory minimum prison term. That's an important tool for prosecutors to use to get the most violent offenders, the people that are hurting other people, off the street. She refused to file ACA actions. And so that's exactly what the Vera Institute had called on her to do. She acquiesced. That partnership, again, was devastating. And so we're calling on Congress to eliminate future funding for the Vera Institute. I would encourage other like-minded state attorneys general to look at their state-level prosecutions and determine if any of their offices have partnered with the Vera Institute and eliminate and eradicate those relationships, because they have devastating consequences for public safety.
Attorney General Andrew Bailey joins us on Wake Up Mid-Missouri this morning.
So now that she's gone and we've got a new prosecutor in there, Gabe Gore, are you all interfacing with him at all, helping with the transition, keeping an eye on that office? Because, you can't just right that ship, super quickly.
Yeah, Stephanie, and thank you for asking. That is an untold part of this story in the history of the state of Missouri that I'm so proud of, that I think that people need to understand. We didn't just remove Kim Gardner. We instantly helped restore the rule of law and find justice for victims. So we were going to court on May 16th, and 2 hours before we were supposed to be in court, she resigned. 3 hours after that, my office sent a team of 7 prosecutors into the circuit attorney's office. And so imagine that. We were adversarial to her office. All of a sudden, we've got the keys. The governor has appointed us to assist. We go into that office and instantly reestablish law and order. How did we do that? We reopened the warrant office. So as police were catching criminals and applying for warrants, we were submitting those warrants to the court to hold those individuals in custody until such time as the case could start moving forward. We were on the scene of a homicide that night, helping fill out search warrants to hold that wrongdoer accountable. We instantly prepared numerous cases for jury trial by getting evidence out the door, part of discovery, by subpoenaing witnesses, prepping the case for trial. We mentored the skeleton crew staff she still had remaining so that they could stand up and do their jobs for the first time in years. We also we helped start reviewing cases for new charges and got several cases bound over through probable cause hearings. And we kept 100 cases as a safety valve. That's the kind of work we did to restore the rule of law in the city of St. Louis. And again, that's an untold part of the history of this event.
General Bailey, we appreciate you joining us. I'm going to go back to that about that warrant office. Tell us about that. You said you reopened it, so that was closed. And why was that? Why was that closed, and when was that closed?
So at some point during Kim Gardner's tenure, she stopped having an attorney at a desk 24/7 to receive warrant applications from the police officer. So at 4 a.m., if there's a homicide and the police catch the suspect and have probable cause to hold him, they need to be able to, they can't do that for more than 24 hours without a judge signing a warrant. And so there used to be an office with a desk and a computer and a prosecutor sitting there 24/7. And the police could show up and say, hey, I just caught this bad guy. Here's my probable cause statement. The prosecuting attorney would help fill out a warrant application and would get an order from the judge to hold the suspect in custody. Kim Gardner stopped doing that. And so what happened was she just set up a computer system, and police would have to email their warrant applications in, and she would kind of get to them when she could. But it essentially resulted in a catch and release policy where the police were catching bad guys on the street in real time, but they couldn't hold them because they couldn't get a warrant because the prosecutor wasn't fulfilling their proper role in the system. And so that warrant office was critical to instantly reestablishing the rule of law in the city of St. Louis. And it had immediate impact, immediate results. And I'm proud to see that the current circuit attorney has maintained that effort.
General, St. Louis judge all ready to hear arguments. We flip the story a little bit in another lawsuit challenging Missouri's abortion law. This is one of the ones that lawmakers passed measures that stands and inserted their own religious beliefs. Where is this all headed, and what do you think is going to end up ultimately on the ballot before Missourians?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's important to understand who the plaintiff is here, and it's the Church of Satan has declared that their religious right to kill babies has been violated by Missouri's heartbeat bill that protects innocent life and the health of women and children. And so they've challenged that statute. We've won almost on we've defeated all of their claims except for one. That single claim still needs to be litigated, and so we're going back to court today to litigate that claim in the city of St. Louis. These types of claims have failed in the past, and so we're confident in ultimate victory on this issue, and we'll continue to defend the health and safety of women and children in the state of Missouri.
General Bailey, any other news you'd like to share with our audience today? It seems like things are always bubbling and boiling in your office to the public benefit.
Yeah, guys, and I know we've talked about it before, but we have the most important First Amendment suit in this nation's history pending. We've uncovered a relationship of coercion and collusion between Biden's White House and big tech social media to silence American voices in violation of our right to free speech as codified in the First Amendment to the United States Constitution. Everyone will remember when those censorship algorithms on big tech suddenly changed in 2020, and all of a sudden people were being shadow banned or booted off platforms.
A hungry cook has pizza aficionados on edge after revealing the sneaky way he steals a piece of his customer's pie without them noticing. Put it up on TikTok and it got 3 million views. Shows the guy Pizza Pro Jay Ryan pulling the pizza out of the oven, then sneakingly swiping a strip out the middle with a pizza cutter and pushing the halves back together and putting it in a box. Then he holds up the camera and says, "Look, dinner." And in the background, if you pull up the TikTok, the Bad Girls Club song, "How Will They Know," is playing in the background. One commenter said it's called the driver's slice. Another said, nah, stealing. And the third guy said, well, I don't want my pizza cut right now. This is in Punta Gorda, Florida, Brooklyn Joe's. And it prompted the line from one guy to say, what is an aardvark's favorite topping? Anchovies. And now you know the rest of that story.
Oh, John.
You know, there was one of my favorite conspiracy theories is from a couple years ago. A YouTuber named Shane Dawson did like this big YouTube series about some conspiracies that were going around. And one of the conspiracies that he focused on was Chuck E. Cheese, of all places. And the conspiracy theory that they recycle their pizza. So basically, if you were to go eat there and, you know, leave, say, 4 slices of your pizza on the table, they would take those 4 slices, put it with another customer's leftover, you know, 2 or 3 slices, and make it look like a whole pizza. They'd run it back through the oven with some cheese on top and
there you go.
Make it look brand new.
Chuck E. Cheese is the devil. Anybody who's been there with kids knows that.
Yeah, that can't be
Obviously, it's not been proven, but it's one of my favorite conspiracy theories to just kind of laugh at.
What a story. What a story. Hey, we ought to talk about something that's very important to me because it's very important that women have their screening for breast cancer. So, Stephanie,
yesterday,
congratulations.
I know. I went and got my first mammogram.
Oh, yeah, you are that age now.
I know. I was feeling, and all of my doctors were on top of it. I don't have a lot of, but my OBGYN and my regular doctor said, oh, you're 40. You got to go, you got to go, you got to go. So I went yesterday. I have heard from other folks, oh, it's not very fun and whatever. It wasn't bad.
Yeah.
And it was like 15 minutes. It was super fast.
There's a myth about how it hurts so bad. And I think in the early days, there's a learning curve from the person administering the exam. And with different technology, it could be true occasionally. But nowadays, with the great technology, it's lower dose, less pain, and more information for the radiologist. They're even better.
I've heard many women come out of mammograms and thinking that they were just in a booby trap. So,
you know, John, you'll get a kick out of this. When the mammograms first came out, I had a couple patients who had bad experiences with pain, and they sent me a meme. It was a cartoon of a guy standing against the wall with a couple of plates squeezing a guy part.
Oh, no.
And all it said was manogram.
I mean, that's only fair, right?
I mean, I have had many a voluntary beauty procedure that was much more painful that I actually paid for. That has been much more painful than what I went through yesterday. But, you know, I think we've all been affected by cancer. And here, you know, I know it affects people in my life and others close to me, especially here recently in mid-Missouri. And it's a horrible thing, and anything we can do to encourage others to get out there and find it early. And, you know, I'm busy, and I didn't want to go yesterday, and I didn't want to have to take that time off my calendar, but it's important.
I am so thankful that you did that because, you know, some of the recommendations from the more bean counting dependent organizations, I won't specify who they are, say, you know, and some insurance companies will say, you know, they're going to age 50, you know, whereas really 40 is the right time to get your mammogram, or earlier if you have a family history. You should, you know, the 50 people want to save some money, you know, and they're claiming that the gals between 40 and 50, it may result in a few more biopsies that come back negative, but I think I'd rather know earlier. I can tell you, with the treatment as great as it is now for early breast cancer, I tell patients if they have an early breast cancer and they know surgically when it's taken out, they do a lymph node biopsy with some great technology, that I tell them, hey, this is going to be a little speed bump in your life.
Yeah.
20 years ago, I wasn't able to say that. Mm-hmm. So it's a big deal. Thanks for doing that and for sharing it with everyone. Mm-hmm. All right. But, we've got someone coming up next hour, which I'm really looking forward to, because this is about commerce in Missouri, right? And so this is a guy with the group called the Hawthorn Foundation. We're looking forward to that.
Yeah, he's actually with Port KC, and they do a lot of economic development there within Kansas City, but they also are members of the Hawthorn Foundation. Okay. I've recently joined. They had a meeting here last year in Columbia, and it was really interesting. We heard Moon Choi talk about all the great things going on, but they also take these international trips to go basically tell others about all of the good things going on in Missouri and trying to bring, not only bring businesses here, but support the businesses that we already have.
Yeah. Speaking of business and commerce, Helene and I joined with our practice. We joined the Chamber of Commerce here. And so we went to our first quarterly breakfast yesterday morning. And it was a panel discussion with Kip Kendrick and Randy Cole and Carlon Seawood. It was about the unsheltered, the homeless population. Really an enlightening conversation. There are a lot of private groups that are doing an awful lot to try to address this issue. And I think it was really informative. I have to compliment the Chamber and Commissioner Kendrick and Carlon and Randy Cole with the Columbia Housing Authority. Did a great job.
I'm sad I missed it.
professional.
That's right.
Weren't wearing their Crocs.
I never wore them because we have our youngest daughter had a pair of lime-colored Crocs that she fell in love with for 3 years, and she had the stinkiest feet in the whole school because of the Crocs, because she wouldn't wear socks with them. So I have that bad taste in my nose. Okay. At any rate, we're gonna switch gears here a little bit, because commerce and the development of business and jobs and prosperity in our state is always on everyone's agenda. So we're proud to bring to the microphone John Stevens, who is with Port KC, and he joins us now. How you doing, John?
I'm doing great. Good morning. I'm here with my best friend at this time of morning, my cup of coffee. So I'm happy to be with you, too.
We join you in that. Yeah, well, John, I had the opportunity to get acquainted with the Hawthorn Foundation over the last year. We joined, and I think it's been fascinating learning about exactly what's going on in with this group. And part of what they do is they take these trips overseas to talk to folks, other business folks, about what it means to, grow a business and have a business in Missouri. And you've had the opportunity to go on some of these trips. Will you share with us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I became connected to the Hawthorn Foundation, about 3 or 4 years ago, and was really impressed with kind of the bigger missions they have of, programming, education, but also really hands-on, dedicated partnership with the State Department of Economic Development to go on trade missions to really, we are a state leader now, thanks to the Hawthorn Foundation, in international job attraction and really looking at investments to Missouri. And these trade delegations are vital to have face-to-face interactions and really show the many benefits of Missouri for investing and for existing businesses that are here and how to grow. I've been lucky enough to represent the Kansas City, Missouri region and Port KC and really all of our ports and our logistics infrastructure on these trips in Germany last year and most recently in Japan this year. And you know what? Missouri is on the rise. Missouri is getting a lot of attention by global businesses looking to grow in the United States.
We're talking with John Stevens, President and CEO of Port KC, and about economic development. He's an economic development professional, been on those mission trips and, of course, developing it in the state here through the Hawthorn Foundation's activities. So I have a question for you. What differential advantage does the delegation present to potential international business interests that would bring business here when they're looking at the same messaging in one form or another from 49 other states, or if you're Barack Obama, 55 other states?
Right, exactly. It is true that I think if anybody's doing their job representing any other state, they are, of course, going to stand up in front of an executive or a Fortune 100 company and say, well, we're the best state, and here's why. The difference that Missouri has, and I think a lot of it is because of we really are a collaborative state. We truly work together across the state and across party lines and across everything to focus on where we have one distinct advantages and where I think almost everyone agrees, and that is developing our workforce. We have Missourians historically have a work ethic like no other. And when you support that with programs that develop workforce and create trade education, trade programs, that is something that, particularly in Europe, has been a foundation there, and they haven't seen it when they've been looking to hire and grow American jobs. And they see it in Missouri. I believe Missouri is number 2 in workforce and trade programs and education and getting Missourians into quality jobs. And that resonates. Of course, we have a really favorable business climate from tax structure, but also energy costs. And, and I'll say the mix of energy costs of wind and solar and renewables, but also this heritage energy that still provides affordable, reliable energy to these manufacturing companies and to these companies. That's valuable and isn't available in many parts of our country and many parts of the world. and then just our willingness to listen and observe and then bring back solutions for these businesses. And it's paid off. It has brought and expanded dozens of businesses to the tune of a couple $2 billion in just the last couple of years in Missouri.
I think you got me up there, Randy. Thank you so much. Good morning. And I really appreciate you, sir, joining us about the Hawthorn Foundation. And you're absolutely, I'm going to give you two local examples here about the governor's trip to Japan. I was with the governor right before he went to Japan. I was with him and the Director Chin over at the Missouri Department of Agriculture. You've got the Kawasaki plant in Boonville. That's a huge plant over there. And right in Jefferson City, you've got Hitachi. And the governor, as you know, met with both of them in Japan in October. And you're in Kansas City. And I want to ask you this. When I was with the governor, he told me about this April merger between Canadian Pacific Railway and Kansas City Southern, the single-line transnational railroad that links Canada, U.S., and Mexico. Now, you've got the port. I know this is a big deal for you. But the governor says that is huge to Japanese companies operating in Missouri. I would assume it's huge to other companies operating maybe from different countries. Your thoughts?
Our Class 1 rail network in Missouri and continuing to support it in Missouri as it connects to really all of North America, and then through our blue water ports, the ocean ports, with this CPKC merger, which I have to brag is the American headquarters is in Kansas City, Missouri, and they are investing significant dollars in Missouri, both in leadership and in the actual infrastructure. Missouri truly was born as a crossroads of transportation from the beginning, and continuing to leverage that need. And when we had all those supply chain disruptions through the global COVID shutdowns and everything else, Missouri took a real moderate approach to how to handle that. And at the same time, we started looking at, we can't just have Port of LA or Port of Long Beach bringing in and exporting 75% of our goods to the world. We just can't, because if that's delayed, it has a ripple effect. And Missouri has the ability to say, we have all of the Class 1 rail lines. We have a robust highway system, which, by the way, we're investing billions in to bring back up to world-class standards for all of us that drive on I-70. As I head down to Mizzou games on Saturdays, I want that, but also the truck and transportation traffic. So really investing in intermodal shipping for Missouri has leapfrogged us really to the top of the consideration set. And when you've got companies that are bringing in hundreds of millions of dollars worth of goods and wanting to buy our ag products and our finished ag products and many of our aerospace products and ship those out to the world, they want certainty that those goods are going to get in and out in a timely manner and a cost-effective manner. And I think the investments that Missouri is making in our infrastructure, and now we're telling that story, they lean in. Legitimately, they put their elbows on the table and want to learn more every time the governor or any of us bring those up.
John Stevens joins us on Wake Up Mid-Missouri, President and CEO of Port KC. We're talking about Port KC and other business and community organizations that are about economic development through the Hawthorn Foundation and working to develop that in Missouri, a University of Missouri alumnus. And by the way, Stephanie, you and John will have to connect afterwards because he's a board member of KC Streetcar as well. So you guys can connect there. John Marsh, you had something for John.
Yeah, I think the question is, we hear about Port KC, and I think for a lot of people, they're not aware of what it is, but it's a busy barge port and all. You talked about the blue water ports. That piques people's attention when we think back to the Trump administration going after the Chinese ownership of the Port of Long Beach and all that. There's some real fears there that the Chinese, through third-party companies or whatever, would like to get in and take over all of our port systems, not just the blue water ports or ports on the Great Lakes.
Yeah, no, it is a legitimate question, and I think a rightful concern as to creating monopolies that maybe are not the type of ownership and type of collaboration that we want in Missouri. I can tell you I'm lucky enough to sit on the National Waterways Council, and so I have counterparts that lead ports of New Orleans and ports in the Pacific Northwest. I think, and one of the things to maybe give people a little bit of breath of relief is particularly the CPKC merger, but also the ownership of BNSF and these others. These rail lines, they are a key piece of these blue water ports, because when those TEUs, when those shipping containers by the millions come off of these super shippers or loading onto the super shippers to send Missouri products to the world, they're doing it primarily via rail into those ports. And the good news with the CPKC merger is they are now the only North American rail line that has a Pacific blue water port in Canada, an Atlantic blue water port in Canada, a New Orleans port, and a Mexican port that are all on this same system managed here through the CPKC ownership, direct lines of communication. There's a lot of value there. And that's not to diminish the other great partners of UP and BNSF and all the other ones. They're doing great work too. But having that heavy competitiveness here in North America with great partners, I think really helps blunt some of the concerns about maybe some troubled ports or value play purchases on ports that may end up being sold to some undesirable kind of global investors. I think we've got a really strong network of movements, and we're moving forward. Just as a very brief aside, we have the fastest growing port in the Midwest here on a small port that we just had the governor visit earlier this week. For a dedication of a new dock. We received $7 million in funding for a new dock that will double our capacity of bulk goods. But we're in the final stages of developing a 450-acre world-class intermodal, which will actually accommodate tens of thousands of new shipping containers on vessels. For the first time on the Mississippi and the Missouri, you'll see effectively smaller versions of the giant ships that come across the ocean, but smaller river-going vessels that can carry up to 2,000 shipping containers per vessel. That changes the game of how we look at our inland waterways. And I'll tell you, Missouri is the leader in that right now.
John, I have a question for you regarding logistics of one of these visits. I'm thinking you got the Port of Kansas City. I'm sure St. Louis has a barge port, and you think about different trucking companies. Okay, you get several people in the same silo on the trip with the governor. Who curates and adjudicates which kids are going to sit at the next to the governor at the table and not?
Well, I could make the joke that other than a couple of the governor's security detail, I'm the biggest guy at the table. So I sometimes I will shove my way to the front. But no, in all honesty, we truly believe there are 14 port authorities, and we work so collaboratively in Missouri with our port authorities that there is no competitiveness when it comes to the Missouri ports because we know that the more goods and the more interest there is in our inland waterways, the more business we're all going to get.
Well,
and so we support, we advise, we consult the smaller ports. We learn from the ports that are doing innovative things. And when we go, Port KC is really
And if you want to buy those new McDonald's Crocs, which are quite expensive, Hannah, what are they, $70?
$70 to $75 of hideousness.
CableTV.com is currently accepting applications for Chief of Cheer, where they will pay you $2,500 to watch 25 Christmas movies over 25 days.
Are you kidding me?
No, so you get $2,500. All you have to do is watch these 25 movies in 25 days, and then on top of that, you get a year-long subscription to 7 different streaming services.
Really?
So CableTV.com, if you're looking for a holiday side hustle, that's a
good one.
They're taking applications until December 1st. And I think you can smoke your marijuana and watch the movies at the same time, Dr. Joe.
I will not be doing that. Thank you. But especially as the subscription 6, and it's time for leftovers, but we're going to have 2 segments of leftovers. So we have more leftovers than we have after a tailgate party. Speaking of tailgate parties.
Man, what a transition, Randy. I give that a 10 out of 10.
Well, it's become a running joke with producer Brian Hansen and me because I usually don't get a chance to eat lunch for whatever reason. And then I come in here and I'm just famished, because I've been up since 5:30 or 6 in the morning and, busy at the office. And I don't know, it just doesn't happen. And man, it's like I'm like a kid in a candy shop when there's leftovers from Tiger tailgates. So, but the problem is, if they're a week old, I'll eat them. I don't care as long, I don't care. Just put them in there. Now that's
physician heal thyself.
That's not good doctor advice. I make the joke that, it's good exercise for your immune system, It's like,
I want you to know how much Brian Hansen talks about that when you're not here. He's like, at least a couple of times a week, I just can't believe that Randy will eat leftovers that are a week old.
Well, no, I think 5-6 days is my max, but it depends what it is, too. And, I mean, other people are eating it.
They certainly are.
They'll eat them, right? They just may not admit it.
I'm with you. I mean, my eating habits get real weird when I'm super busy, and you're like, I'm just hungry. Like, I got to eat something.
So I nuke it. I mean, I just nuke it to where it takes a half an hour to cool down, but I nuke it. That actually will not destroy a lot of the toxins. But at any rate, I did want to talk about the Tiger tailgate because we need to remind people. How many more do we have?
This is the last one.
This is it, right?
6:30. I've checked in with Ryan Coslin to see if it's a sellout, waiting to hear back. If it's not, it's very close. But 6:30, senior night, because the final regular season game will be at Arkansas, so it's this Saturday.
Well, 6:30 is kickoff.
Correct.
The tailgate opens at 4:30 in front of Mizzou Arena.
Exactly.
And and there's always lots of food and beverage and everything, so it's really a good time.
Yeah, Buffalo Wild Wings is there.
Buffalo Wild Wings, and then we have down in Big O, too, don't they? No. Who else are sponsors of that?
You can find a full list of locations where you can get your Tiger Tailgate passes that are free, I might add.
If they are free.
On the radio station website, kws.com, 939theeagle.com.
I'm looking here at 939theeagle.com, and I was trying to find it. I'm blanking on it, but that's where you go for it. Okay.
The big header at the top that says Tiger Tailgates. That's the one, Randy.
I see Wake Up Mid-Missouri, shows, Mid-Mo News, on-air schedule, trending now, Columbia Buzz, Wake Up Mid-Missouri, become an Eagle insider.
Yeah, I'm not seeing it either. I must be just missing it.
See, wait a minute. I'm used to my kids making fun of my IT.
I've seen it.
Here, Dad, let me help you.
I actually did call you a boomer already once this morning, and I don't even know if you're aware of it.
It's on KWS. Yeah. On KBOS.com, but not on 93.9 The Eagle. I don't see it up there.
It's on
Tiger
there.
Tailgate parties.
Okay. On the Eagle website,
yes.
If you go to the slider section just below Mid-Mo News.
Sliders like White Castle?
No.
It is in that slider section of all the show photos and things like that.
What about on the app? Can I get there from the app?
Yes, it is linked on both station apps in the What's Happening category.
Heck, just show up.
At any rate, in Columbia, Buffalo Wild Wings, Vaughn Pool and Spas, G&D Pizzeria, and in Jefferson City, Big Whiskies, Lutz's Barbecue, Big O Tires. See, I got a memory. It hasn't gone yet. The dementia hasn't set in yet. John, you know the people in Jefferson City that are doing so. But by Wednesday, wait a minute. Is it too late now? I thought Wednesday was the cutoff. Can people go in today and get something?
Hannah?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure, they've
you
got
just got to go check out
Hannah
the
authorizes you to go in.
And I think that my understanding is the turnouts have been great. I'm always at Learfield doing scoreboards, but
I wish I could go this weekend, but I'm going to be out of town.
And those, I agree with John's right about Lutz's, but you got the G&D Lutz's exactly.
Lutz's, not Lutz's. Lutz's, whatever. Lutz.
And
Let's call the whole thing off.
I miss them.
It's great barbecue.
Miss them in Columbia. Love them in Jefferson City.
Barbecue.
But the chicken, those nuggets that basically Buffalo Wild Wings. They are incredible.
How late will you go on the chicken nuggets in the refrigerator that are left over? Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday?
It's going to have to be the day after because I can't. I'm
with you, Brian.
Okay, John, help me here.
Not back from that, but I don't want to have to go through that
John?
again.
Yes, sir.
How late will you go on the leftovers in the fridge?
Boy, I don't know. Leftovers in the fridge at home or leftovers in the fridge here in the station?
Why does it matter? They're all good. It's all a refrigerator, right?
I don't know. I think this kind of rocks into a discussion about the 5-second rule as well.
Or about like chain of custody. Like, where has this stuff been?
Yes.
Now, guys, look, Fabio has some words for you.
All right.
And this would be clip 4, Hannah. So Fabio Cavuto was talking with Fabio. You know Fabio, who's been on more than 500 of the romance novel things with the long flowing hair. Mm-hmm. Every guy really wants to be Fabio. He won't admit it, but every guy wants to be Fabio.
I think every guy wants to be Travis Kelce.
Yeah, that's true.
Fabio's more reachable, maybe. I don't. And so Cavuto, they got talking about the war, and then Fabio got talking about, being a guy, and Cavuto said, well, give some advice to the guys that want to be, on that cover, want to be a Fabio kind of guy. Here it is.
What's your advice for the modern Fabios out there who are trying to do what you did? Good luck, because I think a fraction of the covers are their way. I think you'll hold that record. But if you had to give them advice, young guys like, a young version of you, what would you tell them?
Be yourself and don't drink soy milk. Soy milk, all the estrogen, it's like, men and women, they're different. Men have to have testosterone. And, in this case, especially, in cases of war, it's like you need, who you think is going to save you? The metrosexual guy, in the city, or somebody who has testosterone, who's in the army, it's like, I'm telling you, it's like the world right now is upside down, and they're taking, if you look about it, they're taking the side of the criminal instead to take the side of the victim and the police. We need to come back in some law and orders. That's very important,
So, gentlemen,
I know that message, by the way, on that particular network, I'm sure resonated because a lot of conservatives watch Fox News.
Well, and this whole talk about toxic masculinity,
the crime he's talking about.
But the whole men are being softened these days.
Soy boys.
They wear purses. They get metrosexual.
They're called merces now.
Let's have some serious testosterone. Look at Brian. If you were to do the Fabio routine, do you imagine? You look spectacular in your Speedo now.
Oh, gosh.
Can you imagine how much more spectacular you would look?
I actually tell young women, I'm like, when you're dating, like the number of times you're going to need a man to lift something heavy for you. And I can't imagine. My dad's a Marine. I can't imagine having to call my dad being like, my husband's too much of a wimp to move this couch. Can you help me out? And so and now I can loan him out to people. Like he can help, but like you need somebody who has the physical strength who can help you in your, like, because I can't do it.
Wait,
right?
Did you just say?
Yeah, in defense of that, I remember calling your dad plenty of times to come fix my electrical system at my house.
Oh, yeah. But it is terrifying because I went to this Main Street conference right here in Columbia last week, and they had someone talking about health and about diet. And it was actually, I think, the owner of Kettle and Fire, the bone broth. Mm-hmm. And he brought up this statistic, and it freaks me out, and I just looked it up. 77% of Americans between the ages of 17 and 24 are unqualified physically to enter the armed forces. Yep. So what Fabio was saying is like, who's going to defend us in this war? If China or Russia comes after us, we literally can't. We don't have enough people to fight back. Like physically healthy people.
My daughter, who is out there in North Carolina, what used to be Fort Bragg, now Fort Liberty, and her husband's in training. And that's the talk around, the bases is they don't have the recruits that can pass the test, the physical test. And sperm counts are going down all across the world and in Missouri and in the U.S. A lot of that has to do, I think, with what are called endocrine disruptors. We see them in our plastics. We see them in our pesticides or herbicides. So it has to do with environmental as well. Obesity contributes to lower testosterone. Diabetes. So there's a lot there. And I just thought it was cute that he said, drink more. Don't stop drinking soy milk.
Yeah, and he mentioned about 3 or 4 things, and you guys both picked up the aspect there. I was more thinking, I thought what would really resonate with the listeners is what he said about people are siding with criminals and not the victims. I thought that was that was very, very telling. Do you know he was referenced in the movie Moneyball? Brad Pitt. Brad Pitt played Billy Bean in the movie Moneyball, and he was referencing, and that at the time I didn't really know much about Fabio, but he was talking about the Yankees are taking our kidneys and the Boston Red Sox are taking our heart, and he was talking to all the agents. And he said to all these scouts from the Oakland A's, this is 2001, 2002. He said, "You all think we're Fabio." And this old scout, he must have been 90 years old, said, "Who's Fabio?" And another old scout said, "He's a shortstop for the Seattle Mariners." He had the wrong guy. One of the greatest lines I remember, I was literally almost crying watching that movie, laughing so hard, but it was really well done. So whenever I hear him, I always think of the line, "Who's Fabio?" In fact, if you Google Moneyball, "Who's Fabio?" that will come up because I found it.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you ever want to make sure that you are hands down the champion at the trivia night, get Hauswirth on your team.
There you go.
All right, when we come back, we'll wrap it up and cover some texts and take some calls. 573-874-9390 on Wake Up Mid-Missouri. a new civic center down there, convention center.
Mm-hmm.
I hear about great things going on with, cleaning up the jail, on and on. I don't hear about the same rancor and policing tensions that you hear about in Columbia. And as sort of a newcomer residentially to the area, I find that interesting. Do you have any analysis on that? You have any thoughts on why there's just seems to be less controversy in Jefferson City than in Columbia? Why?
Well, gosh, I'm sure Stephanie could weigh in as well. It's a much more conservative community. It doesn't have the giant population base from a liberal college. It's a different thing. But yeah, I guarantee there is a lot of support for police in Jefferson City, both out there in front and behind the scenes than there is in Columbia. And it's maybe 30 miles, but it can be worlds away sometimes.
And as a business owner there, Stephanie, I mean, do you feel a different atmosphere in general, different environment?
Yeah, I think it's really, John's right. There's more unity among like the political beliefs there.
Uh-huh.
But at the same time, I think a lot of the folks, I would say like Sheriff Wheeler, I've known him, I think, my whole life. Before that, Sheriff White, I knew him these are people from our community that rose up in the ranks, which is why I'm really excited about Chief Schlude, who kind of worked her way up. And so I think if you know those folks, and so much of what she said was, there's transparency, there's a conversation, there's a level of trust there with the community. And I think in Jefferson City, you really grow up and you know your law enforcement officers. And if you have an issue, they've got your back. And when they ask you for something or ask you for law enforcement support, they know that the community has their back too. And that's, it's a long-term thing that I think, in my lifetime, I feel like has always been there in Jefferson City, and that maybe we've been lacking in Columbia, but I'm hopeful maybe with this turnover in leadership, we can, start working that way in Columbia. And I think also, elected officials, right? It's an interesting dynamic in Columbia because obviously the city council doesn't pick the chief. Carlin Seawood, chose the chief. And I think in the past, what we know from our folks in law enforcement in Columbia is that they haven't always felt supported by elected officials in Columbia. And I think that creates a community tension and invites additional tension. Whereas I think you don't have that same tension in Jefferson City.
Yeah. And I wonder if just the fact that you've got Highway 70 running through here, which is a more accessible portal for the drug trade, right? To come across from either St. Louis or Kansas City, and this can be sort of a nexus in Columbia. Little different, I guess coming from the southwest up through Highway 54 and stuff can I guess come up through Jeff City. But there just seems to be a different vibe, in terms of the criminality that abounds both places.
Certainly. It's tough.
So are you going to connect with John Stevens, with the KC Streetcar board member?
I haven't met him face to face, but I have been attending these Hawthorn events. They have quarterly meetings, and folks in as small a business as mine, my couple-person law firm, can join and support the work of the Hawthorn Foundation. It's been just an absolutely wonderful way to find out more about what's going on, in the state business community. And so they had an event here. Again, we heard from Dr. Moon Choi and heard about their latest trip. And they also, what I really want to do is once you're a member, you get invited to go on the trips.
Ooh, there you go.
Trade missions.
But as a private citizen, I would have to fund my own way on these trips. And they're often quite lengthy. But that's kind of on my bucket list. I would love to go and be able to tell people about all of the wonderful things happening in Missouri and observe how these other folks on the trip are selling our state. So.
I've got a better idea for you.
Okay.
Run for office.
And then have the people
get your campaign for it to pay for it, and then when you make office, get the office to pay for it too. I know someone that did that.
Oh.
There you go. Then you could be our next Speaker of the Missouri House.
I'm sorry. I'm just joking there. Just joking. I don't have any ponies in this race at all.
But yeah, the Hawthorn Foundation is a wonderful organization. I know they've already got their meetings lined up, and we actually went down, I think we were in Cape Girardeau for one of the meetings, and that's not an area that I get to too frequently, and learning more about what goes on down there and about the universities, and they've got a lot of academic institutions involved and I think bringing that, that's so important, bringing together our universities and the business folks so we know, hey, the folks that we're churning out of these colleges have a place to go, and they're the type of graduates that our business owners need and want to see.
Before we close, I want to give another shout out. I mentioned that I was at the Chamber of Commerce quarterly membership breakfast yesterday with Helene. there was a great presentation by a group that has been around for a while. They call themselves Impact now. They've rebranded. It's a support services group, and I think they intersect with the same kind of help with finding work for folks that have disabilities and so forth, as maybe Love does. But they're called Impact, and they mentioned that they were rebranding. I had to get out of there and run to the office because I had a patient waiting, but I was really impressed. I mean, to throw some favorable light on this community of Columbia.
Incredibly generous.
Incredibly generous, incredible number of people doing things quietly with multiple organizations to address a lot of social issues, and it's really gratifying to see. Mm-hmm. So hats off to all of you that are out there involved in one way or another through your church or civic organization. Well, that'll wrap it up for Wake Up in Missouri on this Thursday. I'll see you tonight on the radio at 4 o'clock. Thanks for being with us.
Bye.